Hospital report as pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to her Panwo TV and welcome to this, another reply video to Steve Mumbling. The last one I did was in February. It was a reply to, basically, it was just called 2021. This one's different. This is about Peter Paget and a few other things as well, which I'm going to add on as well. Because you see, goes back to a conversation Steve and I had earlier where Steve claims that he knew Peter Paget. And I said, well, if he knew Peter Paget, then he must have been a woo-woo, like me, a tinfoil hat owl, a nutter. Well, Steve's made a little video explaining that, but before I begin analysing the video, I'm just going to address some of the comments that were left underneath this video by Steve. I firstly say that I'm going to make a reply video to this. And Charles Unleashed says, well, get on with it, Ben. May I introduce Jilly below? She trained Agent Wren. And someone called Jill D says, hello, Ben. And I says, hello, Jilly, you did a good job. Agent Rin had me right under her thumb. And Charles says, now you're in it, Ben. There's two of us. Charles always wins. Where was it now? Then Dave, oh, right, yeah. Now, David Smith says something on the other video. But so Dalai Lapa says here, funny enough, I can see Dalai Lapa now. I don't know why that is. But he says, what? You found no evidence? It just goes to show what happens when you turn your back on the likes of Toby Tupping, Benji Bentwaters, Milton Jonestown, Barry Ovaltine, and Gary Lauren, a researcher who's only as good as the information stream. And these new paradigm beauties are the Mutts nuts, the Tesla's testes, the D Hall's balls. Check yourself on your evidence, and we'll have you remote viewing by the end of the month. You know us so well, don't you, Dalai? I actually reply here, I said, very witty way to put it. I've been to Warminster twice and had a very different experience from Steve. And Steve replies here, that's because you're a woo-woo. Woo-woo sees precisely what they want to see. They don't look for evidence. All right. Well, Steve, we're going to come to that in a minute because you have actually made this point in your little photon celluloid rant. And he wrote, you did another one here called, has Ben Emlyn Jones finally lost his mind? Oh, God, here we go. But David Smith says here, and this we're getting more serious now, because David Smith says, a good dissection of Ben and some of his claims. His straw man skeptic arguments mean there is little point in leaving a comment on his videos. Whenever I try to pin him down, instead of responding to my comment, he'll say, well, other skeptics say, and then proceed to use his straw man definition of skepticism to respond to my comment. Well, I say under here, nonsense. I've been providing detailed replies to as many points you make as I can. I really have tried to be honest with you. David says, Ben, I even made a video highlighting it. Your response was to say, okay, well, this well-known public skeptic figure may say it, but it's really not the case. Unquote. Where is it not the case for someone prominent with regards to skepticism to use your definition of skepticism? Nobody I talk to follow uses this. And I say, but you made the point yourself. I thought I was addressing them. That was my objective. So, I mean, you could decide for yourself. I'll discuss this further with David if he wants to. But I don't think I've done what he said he's accusing me of. I think I have actually made an effort to be honest with all the skeptics who post comments on my videos, and indeed when I interact with them on other people's uploads. There we go. Interesting, Charles Unleashed says this, what is the skeptic movement? One has to care about a cause to make it a movement. Outside conspiracy communities, I've yet to speak to anyone who gives a damn. Yeah, I've heard this. There's no such thing as the skeptic movement. I've often heard this from skeptics. They deny their own existence. And I can't cover that in this video because it goes too much off topic. But David Smith chimes in here, and it's very interesting. Anyway, Bardi's Den. All right, here we go. Steve, Ben did mention that he's going to debate you. Is that true? It would be great. And I did. I says, yes, I am. I've given Steve my email address, and he can respond to me, and we can arrange a time when we can get together and maybe do a live stream. Excuse me. Zoom or Skype. Now, you may think, well, I said I wasn't going to do a live. I wasn't going to speak live to Steve because of his attitude. I've decided I'm going to do that basically because Colin Sugrin doesn't seem to be as bothered about this as I am, and I think to myself, well, why shouldn't I then debate Steve? I mean, firstly, if he wants to come on Apollo Detectives, that's up to the other Apollo Detectives, but what I do on my channel is my business. And I think maybe I should. And Steve here he's obviously interpreted this in the most ungenerous way he can, and he's going to do that several times in the upcoming video the videos he's made, which I'm going to analyse. But he says here, yes, he's finally come out from behind Sugrin. We'll get that organised in the not too distant future. As if what he's saying basically is that I was using Steve's horrible comment to Colin as some kind of excuse, which I wasn't. But that's how he's decided to interpret it. No, I've decided, this is going to be, I think you will enjoy this. It's going to be a great exclusive. We're going to debate the fake alien invasion first. But I'm quite happy to get on a live stream with Steve now and sort it out. If Colin's not bothered by this, then I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I think maybe Steve's done his time for that. I don't know how remorseful he is about it. He hasn't shown any remorse. But he knows what I think. I know what he thinks. And sometimes you just have to move on. I mean, it's not as bad as like what Andrew Johnson said about Ian R. Crane. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a live debate between me and Steve Mumbling. So get the tickets. The tickets go live at midnight. They'll probably all be sold out by 10 past, just like when the Slade goes on tour again. But no, I'm kidding. It'll be free. I'll insist on it being completely free and public. Whether it be a live stream or not, I don't know. Or maybe we'll just record it. But yes, Steve and I are going to go head-to-head. And it's going to be fun, I'll tell you. I'll enjoy taking him apart. I think that's the best revenge I can give for what he said, actually. There's really quite revolting things he said. Okay, so let's go on to the video. Now, as always, I've chosen a marker. What have I chosen as a marker this time? It's not a cow mooing like I chose with Christy Winters. I coincidentally selected that particular sound. Last time, I think, with Stephen Molly. The last one I did with Stephen Molly, I think it was Terence McKenna, wasn't it? There was Brian Cox, and Penn Jillette. So I've chosen a different marker this time. Well, seeing as we're going to be talking about Peter Paget, I thought I'd create a marker of the lad himself. Take it away, Peter.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
So there you are. That's my marker. It's going to be Peter Paget. So I've sent a little email to Peter just to ask him. He may not have time to reply to me. He's a busy man. But I've just sent him a little email asking him to verify what Steve's claims here. But let's examine the claims anyway. I'll just find my notes because I did make a few. I've got some bullet points here. So here we go. This is a video called "Was I a Woo Woo?" by Steve Mumbling, uploaded 6 days ago. Right.
Okay, I forgot to answer something that Ben Emlyn Jones mentioned in his video, and he said, "What happened to me? I used to be a woo woo." Steve Mumbling used to be a woo woo, actually, but
we've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting question because that's the impression I got. Steve told me he'd been down to Warminster a few times. He'd met Peter Paget. He'd hung out with him, and he tried to get in touch with Arthur Shuttlewood, as he's going to explain in a minute. It's completely normal that I would assume that he was kind of a bit like us, because that's what I did. I went to Warminster too. I only went twice. Steve says he went 3 times. Obviously, I went a lot later than Steve did. I think Steve actually went when the thing was going on. You didn't say exactly what dates you actually went to Warminster, but the Warminster thing ran from... it started in the early 1960s, and was by the mid-70s it was winding down. It never completely went away, and even today people still claim they have encounters. So it's a kind of UFO flap that has faded. It's had a kind of half-life from about probably from about 1974, 1975 onwards. It started decaying by its half-life, but as with everything with a half-life, it's like Zeno's paradox. It never completely goes away. But really, that 1 decade, I think, from early 60s to early 70s is when it was at its height. And I assume maybe you went down during that period. I don't know. But I don't know how old you are, actually, Steve. I'm not sure. But anyway, let him carry on.
Because I knew Peter Paget, I didn't really knowing Peter Paget is an exaggeration, but I've been interested in this subject for a very long time. That doesn't mean I desperately want it to be true.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Right, so yeah, I'm interested in what way were you interested though? Because at the moment you are interested in these phenomena. That's how you came into my sites and how we ended up clashing. But yes, you see, skeptics and woo-woos both have probably an equal interest in the same things. They just approach it from a completely different phenomenal perspective. They just have a completely different idea about what is actually causing it. You know, I know that someone like Michael Shermer will probably look up ghosts and UFOs and things like that just as much as I do. I think he's changing his mind. But take an average skeptic. They just see it differently. So I'm interested if you went down there as a believer like me, and you sort of became a skeptic as you sort of matured, because that does happen. I mean, the skeptic movement and the woo-woo movement. I mean, we make converts from each other. As I explained in my skeptic talk, and I actually do recommend, if you haven't seen it already, to go and study that talk, because I go into the whole in great detail of the skeptic movement, and I'll refer you to it several times, and the viewer as well. No description box. Hang on. Okay. Let's make a note here. Just quick note there. Background skeptic talk. Okay. So maybe you went there as a believer and you sort of became a skeptic later, or maybe you just went down there in exactly the same way you are now.
I went down to Warminster and I stayed at Peter Paget's Star House on a couple of occasions. I met Peter Paget and I spoke to him, and went up to Cradle Hill and Star Hill as well, I think, and I was actually trying to find out if there was anything to it. I was looking for evidence.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, that's all very admirable, Steve. I mean, that's what I wanted to do too. I mean, I went twice, and I went both times I went. It was for the same reason, although, of course, the second time I went was for the 50th anniversary conference in 2015, and there'd be a video. Oh, background. A bit of background. Just making notes to put something in the background there. So that's all very admirable. I went up to Cradle Hill as well, and it was great. I had a great time. Star Hill I never went to. I know that Mike Gorham had a very strange experience on Star Hill. You know. So anyway, let's carry on.
And I never found any. The more I look into UFOs and all this sort of stuff, the less I find. All it seems to be is people telling science fiction stories. It doesn't matter who they are, how famous they are. There's no evidence.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, obviously, Steve, I disagree. If to go into details about why I disagree would basically be repeating myself, because this is the latest in an entire series of videos I've made about you. I think there's about a dozen of them. We're just replying to the points you make, and there is evidence. If you didn't find it, well, I don't know why that is, because you several times during this video you will state, and in fact I don't actually allow you to repeat yourself during my little summary. I should point out that I have actually pared this video down a little bit. There's probably about 3/4 of the length it would have been if I just let Steve ramble, but I have actually edited it slightly. This is not to misrepresent Steve's words in any way. This is simply for brevity, and for the point, there's times when Steve repeats himself. He makes the same point over and over again. I've edited those out. I don't believe that this is you could check it for yourself, but I think I have portrayed you honestly the way you would want to portray yourself. Also, I should point out that Steve sometimes has laughing fits. I've edited those out as well. He seems to find some of the things in this very amusing. But, yeah, I mean, I think there is evidence for all the reasons that I've explained. So let him carry on.
It's just all science fiction stories, and a lot of people make a business out of it.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Some people do this professionally, that's correct. Some people are professional ufologists, in the sense that they earn a living out of what they do, they tend not to earn a very big living. I mean, I myself, for example, I receive payments, obviously, for my books. When I sell my books, I will receive a share. I mean, I don't get a royalty because I'm my own publisher, but the printer takes their cut and then they give me the rest. Now, I am those books. Believe it or not, Steve, you wouldn't believe this. They're actually selling fairly well. They're not on the New York Times list yet, but they might be, depending on what happens next. But generally speaking, making a living out of this woo-woo, it's not incredibly lucrative. People who do so. We had this debate about David Icke, right, and many other people. People who do so, they may earn some money out of it, but they believe in what they're doing. Because if they didn't, if they were the con men that you and Charles Unleashed and many other people have accused them of being, they wouldn't be doing it this way. If you're a con man and you are dishonest and you want to make a living out of something you don't believe in, you want to grift some kind of idea that you don't actually believe yourself because you just know that there's a market for it. There's other ways of doing that. There's religious cults and things like that you could set up, or even become very senior within. You could sell dodgy double glazing and beat up second-hand cars and paint them over to make them look better than they are. I mean, these things are much more profitable. These kinds of scams. They're not as exciting. They're not as dramatic, but they make you a lot more money. So why are these people not doing that? If that is what you're implying, why do these people waste their time writing about UFOs?
So was I a woo-woo? Not really. I had an interest in the subject and still do. I mean, interest persists, you know. But I was looking for evidence. I didn't go down there and say, because there were people running around on the top of Cradle Hill saying, oh, there's one landed over there and all this sort of stuff. I never saw anything.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, maybe you weren't there when people had real experiences you didn't see. Or, I don't know. I mean, but I'm quite interested, actually, that you essentially... I don't know how old you are, Steve. I think you're quite a bit older than me. But if you were there during the time of the thing, you'd been pretty young, I think. I'm assuming you're portraying yourself so far as someone basically who is exactly the same now as they were back then. That's your portrayal. That's how you're putting yourself across. Now, there aren't many people like that, you know. Not many people who can honestly say... People say in the age that you are, who can say, well, I've always had all the right answers. I've been the person I am my whole life. I was born and I said, that's it. I'm going to be the Steve Mumbling skeptic when you were about 5 years old or something. And that's what you were till the day you die. That's what you'll be till the day you die. There aren't many people like that. Most people who at a mature age, not necessarily as even people a lot younger than you, will sometimes think to themselves, God, wasn't I an idiot when I was young? I mean, and I'm one of them. I mean, do you believe it or not, you know, I've covered this before in my various political videos. I was a trade unionist. When I was 18 years old, I became a trade unionist. When I joined the hospital, I was very left-wing. I was drawn into this. This is before the wokeism really took hold, although it was there. It was there, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. If I could speak to my younger self right now, if I could speak to my 18-year-old self right now, the first thing I'd do, I'd slap him around the face and say, stop being such an idiot. But not you. You went to Warminster, basically a simply younger version of yourself now. That's unusual. Let's carry on.
One crazy woman with an umbrella was chasing after a satellite. You know, the sort of people that you find in these sort of things are that they see what they want to see. If you're there and you're capable of critical thinking and you look at things, there is no evidence of extraterrestrial visitation.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, this is very fortuitous, Steve, because as you know, I've just come back from a Skywatch. A week ago, just under a week ago, I was in South Wales on a Skywatch near Penturch, And I can assure you that Umbrella Woman is a very, very rare kind of character within the UFO world. I have met Umbrella Woman and people like her a few times. But I honestly can tell you, the people what we experienced during those few hours that we were out there under the skies, the people there were very honest about what they were describing, exactly what they were seeing. We were trying to obviously initiate contact. We saw a couple of things which I think were very interesting. Some of them might have been satellites. Some others disagree and say they were not satellites. I think possibly some of them were. I can't prove that. I certainly didn't see anything I can prove as extraterrestrial, but there was one instance in particular was very interesting where I actually missed this, but other people described it to me, where one object actually appeared to come very close. By that I mean it brightened and it actually changed direction. I missed that, unfortunately. I know that someone else photographed it. Hopefully those photographs and the film of it, footage, will be available, because some people were turning up with proper sky-watching cameras. The people you met, they exist. Those kinds of people, Umbrella Woman, they exist. But in no way are they representative of the people who go sky-watching. I myself in Warminster met much more sensible people, much more sensible. So I think if that's the point you're making, then you're mistaken.
Now, while I was in Warminster, I went round to see Arthur Shuttlewood, who'd written a book called Warnings from Flying Friends, and there was all this hoo-ha about the Warminster thing, and I think Paget probably tipped him off, because I went round to Arthur Shuttlewood's house on a couple of occasions and there was no reply. Now, either he was out or he was cowering behind the door. But I was unable to talk to Arthur Shuttlewood.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Probably the former, Steve. I'm guessing the former. Now, again, you're being very... This is being very paranoid and, frankly, ungenerous in your interpretations, like you were with me when you say that basically I've changed my mind about debating you because I'm not hiding behind, because I'm scared to debate you or something. Maybe Arthur was just out. I mean, I know Arthur he had a lot of contact with the media. He put himself out into the public's area. He had a lot of critics. I don't know specifically what his interactions were with them, but Paget tipped him off. Well, I mean, I'll find out, because I've written to Peter and I asked him if he remembers you. He may not have met you. You say he's met you. I've got to take your word for that, unless he remembers you. But obviously, I'm not going to. If I'm in private correspondence with him, I'm not going to repeat anything publicly unless he gives me permission. But I'm curious to see what he says. But Paget tipped him off. I mean, just imagine, you're driving your car down towards Arthur Shuttlewood's house, and Peter's on the phone going, "Watch it, Steve Mumbling's on his way." And Arthur goes, "Thanks, Peter. I'll just hide. I'll hide under the kitchen table until he's gone." That again is unlikely. He probably was just out. Was just out.
There was supposedly this event that occurred in Warminster where tiles were ripped off of roofs and all this sort of stuff, and I went round and I spoke to a couple of shopkeepers, and they had no idea what I was talking about.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Okay, the point you're now making is that the thing basically wasn't real. The thing was just a few people in the town got this idea into their head that there were UFOs, and most people, like the shopkeepers and others, said, "Nah, it's all a load of rubbish." Well, funnily enough, I was actually talking to, who was it? I think it was on a stream with Caroline Stevens, actually, when she used to speak to me. And a guy came along. What's his name? What's his name? The guy I did interviews with. I actually met him on a Caroline Stevens stream, and we ended up doing a couple of live streams together, and I've forgotten his name. But I did about 6 or 7 interviews with him. He was on my show as well, and I can't remember his name. But he went to Warminster as well, and he said, no, there's something weird was going on. Now, he thinks it was something military, some kind of experiment rather than extraterrestrial. But he said it was real, it was going on. Everyone in the town knew about it. Steve, I think you may have had the bad luck to meet the only person in Warminster who didn't realise this was going on, this shopkeeper guy. Now, honestly, I was in Warminster in 2015 on the 29th of August, which was the 50th anniversary to the day of the big town hall meeting. The town hall was opened. Everyone turned up there. The vicar and everyone else went to address the crowd. It was the biggest crowd that town hall had seen in years. It's not, and the town hall is actually fairly big. I went into the town hall myself. There's lots of room in there. That was packed out. And if you're judging the size of Warminster itself, and looking at the size of that room, I estimate probably the majority of the people in that town were either within the town hall that night. And what's more, there was loads of people outside as well. It was known across the town that something really weird was going on. And so I don't know how it came. You come across a shopkeeper who told you that. Maybe that was just bad luck, or maybe it was confirmation bias on your part.
And I did go up to Cradle Hill and have a look around, and I spoke to people, and the people that I spoke to I thought were typical UFO nuts, to be honest. But I was looking for evidence. I never found any.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised, Steve, because the evidence is in abundance. But again, you're simply projecting. It's like you said with the umbrella lady. You're just simply misrepresenting us when you say typical UFO nuts and things like that. But I don't have to repeat debates I've done with you before, do I?
Oh yeah, Peter Paget. I've mentioned this before, I think, but Peter Paget seemed convinced that I was a member of the security services that had been sent down there to keep an eye on him, simply because I was a young chap with a dark blue car that had a two-way radio in it, which was a little unusual at the time.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, as I said, I've contacted Peter, and I'll if he gives me permission to say what he wants, to say what he remembers, I will. But I'm curious. I'm curious to know what he thinks, whether he remembers you. Could he may have thought you were a shill for various reasons. Firstly, maybe you are a shill. Maybe you were on payment for MI5. I don't know. You know what my position on shills and about how we need some kind of tribunal. And then there's some there's these people who just accuse everyone of being shills. But it does. You do fit the pro. You did if you were driving a dark blue car and you had like a two-way radio. I know these are the old CB things that they used to have. That does fit the profile, doesn't it? It's possible he was a bit wary of you. And Peter has had a lot of attention from the security services ever since he started. Well, before he was working on the book about the Welsh Triangle. Maybe he was a bit concerned. To be honest, Steve. Also, if you were really expressing skeptical attitudes, that's another reason why he might have been a bit wary of you. Anyway, let Steve carry on.
So there we go. So it's just a very, very short video, just a few minutes, just to put you in the picture with regard the my woo-woo status. So. Yeah, I've been looking for evidence, and I've never found any. I've never found any convincing evidence that we're being visited by extraterrestrials. That doesn't mean I think it's impossible. That doesn't mean I think there are no aliens out there. I think there's probably bound to be intelligent species out there in the galaxy, certainly in the universe. Whether they come here and keep an eye on us, well, I wouldn't say that's impossible. I wouldn't put a line through that. I would think that if there's an intelligent species out there and they can fly around the galaxy on a willy-nilly basis, it would be prudent of them to keep an eye on us, to see how likely it is that, or how long it's going to be before we're in a position to go and see them, to see if they need to neutralise us before that happens. That sort of makes sense. It's sort of logical, isn't it?
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, Steve, that is a remarkable thing to hear coming from you, because that's kind of what I think. And so I wonder, after what you've just said there, which is more or less my opinion, that you reject the evidence for UFOs. I don't quite understand that, because you have admitted essentially that they are feasible in theory, but then when this overwhelming evidence comes along that they exist and this has actually happened, you go, no, it's all people with umbrellas, it's all loonies, it's shopkeepers, and What? I mean, this is you say later on. Actually, you don't understand the way we think. People like us. I don't understand the way you think. Skeptics thinks. Anyway, that's the end of that particular video. Let's go on to the next one. It's got a very flattering title. Has Ben Emlyn Jones finally lost his mind? All right, then, Steve, take it away.
Well, I looked at the latest thing from Ben Emlyn Jones. I haven't been watching much of his stuff lately, especially his Trump nonsense. But this I thought was worth commenting on, so I'll comment on it.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Oh, Trump nonsense, Steve. Trump nonsense. Why is it nonsense? I don't see why. You know, I provide absolute evidence for what I think. I put them in videos. One of those videos has just been banned. It's available on all my alt tech channels. So I back up everything now on at least 3 other platforms. So, you know, you're not making an argument here. You just say I'm not going to watch that because it's nonsense. Well, I could say, well, I'm not going to look at this book which says 2 + 2 = 4 because that's nonsense. 2 + 2 = 5. We all know it. I could do that if I wanted. Would that make 2 + 2 = 5? You should look at it, ad hominem fallacy, and poisoning the well. Anyway, all right, maybe you want to cover that in another video, and that's fine. You may want to specialise, but in which case you have to state this Trump nonsense Ben Emlyn Jones goes on about. I'll talk about it elsewhere. There are points I want to make. I don't wish to make them right now. That's all you have to say. Just say those words, and you're off the hook. But by saying Trump nonsense and then just changing the subject, you are essentially stating that you don't wish to address the points I make about President Trump and the things associated with him.
We'll see how we go with this. This is his latest video. I'll leave a link to this below so you can watch this in its entirety if you fancy a bit of a chuckle.
He has a few of them, don't you, Steve?
Here we go.
So we can have a better idea. Well, of course, the NASA know what they are. There's that famous...
Well, if NASA knew what they were, this is talking about UFOs, obviously, the guy wouldn't be saying, OK, well, let's have a look at these from a scientific point of view to see if we can find out what they are, if they knew what they were.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
OK, I'll have to provide some clarity here, I realise, and that's fair enough. What I mean is when I say NASA know what they are, I mean, I'm not saying, well, NASA know exactly what they're alien spacecrafts and Zeta Reticuli, for that reason they don't have to study them. I mean, NASA know that they're not space junk, they're not meteors, they're not stars, and they're not Venus. They're not all the things that people say they are when they're trying to say they're not alien spacecraft. That's what I mean. What I mean by NASA know what they are, NASA know that they are a phenomena which is possibly alien spacecraft. So let's carry on.
There's that famous incident, isn't there, where the spatial discovery, that's Blaha, the pilot, he says, Houston, this is Discovery, we've got the alien spacecraft under observance. That was picked up by a radio ham.
Yeah, it's funny how he's quite happy to accept radio hams can pick up that sort of traffic. But when he's on the Apollo defectives, he's not happy at all that radio hams can pick up the Apollo astronauts.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Okay, well, what I believe I actually said on the Apollo detectives, to give it its proper name, I didn't actually say that radio hams couldn't pick up. Radio hams are basically people who get involved with enthusiasts for shortwave communication. What I disputed was whether what they were picking up from the object that was actually in translunar injection and Earth orbit was the real Apollo craft, or was it some kind of relay? Because the people who produced the stagecraft for Apollo would have probably thought of that. In the days before the internet, amateur shortwave radio was very popular. It was very, very popular indeed. I don't believe I said that hams couldn't pick up these things. What I said was that hams would have picked up relays.
Anyway.
See, what's so funny? Oh, I think I might cut out the thing he was laughing at. Go on.
Anyway, let's have a look at this. This actually did happen. Now, we still have the alien spacecraft under observance. Now, that doesn't, of course, mean it's an alien spacecraft, does it? It just means it's a. It just means it's a spacecraft of unknown origin.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Yeah, it was actually STS-29, which is very interesting. It took off. It was actually took off on the 13th of March, I believe. I've got the page here. The 13th of March, 1989, and I think I was up for 8 days, I think. But it was the Discovery. It was launching tracking and data relay satellites into Earth orbit. It actually launched 3 of them, I believe, and this incident, which John Blaha, the pilot. Now, interestingly, John E. Blaha, I've listened to recordings of his voice, and it does sound like him on that transmission. This happened literally very, very soon after the shuttle was launched. It happened on the day of the shuttle's launch. So it's as soon as basically the spacecraft got up into orbit, whatever happened. This could be that whatever wanted to monitor him, monitor this craft, the shuttle, decided to do so immediately, or it was some kind of mission, as Richard Dolan has said, and Erica Lukes has said, and indeed Steve has made reference to this in this particular video, which I actually made reference to myself. They believe that basically this satellite launch was just the cover. That was the overt mission, but it was just the cover for the covert mission, which was UFO monitoring. So many people say that the ISS serves the exact same purpose today. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. But yeah, he says Houston, this is Discovery, got the alien spacecraft under it. He says alien spacecraft. And Steve says, well, what does it mean, aliens? Okay, well, this is really funny, because when Stevens makes a big song and dance over the fact that the US government, the UAPTF, has never actually said aliens, never explicitly declared their alien spacecraft. When a space shuttle pilot explicitly declares using the word alien spacecraft, there's no code in it. This is not hinting. It's alien spacecraft. Steve says, oh, no, he means something else. So I've got to ask myself the question, if the UAPTF came out and said, yes, these things are alien spacecraft, these Tic Tacs and things are alien spacecraft, would you still maintain that they were saying it was something else? Because it seems to me you're kind of digging yourself into an unfalsifiable hypothesis here, which is a fallacy, as you know. It's a fallacy. You carry on.
That they can see. It's probably a Russian spacecraft, because this was a classified mission. Discovery was up doing something for the NSA. That's what all the classified missions were about. The Russians were keeping an eye on them to see what they were doing.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
During the Cold War, the Soviet Union actually did very closely monitor the activities of NASA, as indeed vice versa, within this standoff that was going on. By 1989, though, the Soviet Union was really in its terminal decline. It was undergoing a massive political and economic upheaval. Which, if you remember the news at the time, there was Gorbachev, the last president, was being booed in the streets. There was the coup. Actually, there was a coup d'état. Actually, I think it was 2 years later, just before the very end. And even though they maintained the Mir space station, Russia at that time really had too many problems of its own on the ground to deal with. Rather than worrying about the Cold War. The Cold War really was, to all intents and purposes, over by the late 1980s. The final coup de grace took place in December 1991, where the Soviet Union itself was disbanded, and today's Russia emerged. But it's possible that there was some kind of unmanned craft in that vicinity, monitoring the space shuttle. It's also possible that the satellite launches were not actually the real mission. You're quite right when you said they may have been doing some covert work for the NSA. It's possible that one of the 3 satellites they launched may well have been a spy satellite, one of the keyhole satellites or the Big Bird satellites, in which case it wouldn't have been shown on TV. So the Russians may have been interested in that, you bet. Honestly, if this had happened maybe 10 years earlier, I'd think that was far more likely than in 1989. But it's possible. Using the term alien spacecraft to refer to a Russian probe, is that correct NASA terminology?
A friend of mine went to live in America live in Florida. And he got a green card for America. It was actually like a little beige credit card, and written on it was resident alien. So the Americans use the term alien for anything non-American.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
They do not colloquially use the word alien for something from whatever you said. Someone like your friend, who was obviously, and he was an evil alien, to quote Sting in the song Englishman in New York. So, yeah, in that song, for example, and indeed in officialdom, the word alien is often used. Alien actually is a synonym of foreigner. And sometimes in foreign countries, in countries which don't speak English and where they often have bad translations, you may see the word alien used in ways where a native English speaker wouldn't, simply because its meaning, the subtleties of its meaning have shifted over the years. English has many, many different words that mean the same thing. But I'll tell you what, I thought of actually a very, very good example, Steve. It's actually a programme by Clive James. Clive James is from your neck of the woods. He's an Australian guy, and he's one of the funniest men who ever lived. He's really hilarious. And there's a documentary where he goes to Japan. It's called Clive James in Japan. And when he lands at the airport in Tokyo, he goes out and he has to go down the non-Japanese citizen route when he goes through customs. And they have a big sign that just says aliens. I thought that was very funny. So yeah, alien can mean that, but you see, it's not alien spacecraft. I mean, and also, of course, it is used in officialdom. Yeah, illegal alien. The term illegal alien actually is still used. But in colloquial speech in the United States, I've not heard the word alien used in any other context other than that, illegal alien. I've not heard it used anywhere else. As I said, NASA. If NASA are going to start saying aliens, when they don't say alien spacecraft, it means there's no alien spacecraft there. If they do say alien spacecraft, it means there's no alien spacecraft there. It's an unfalsifiable hypothesis, Steve. It's interesting. Interesting. I think it's good that you accept that this particular illicit acquirement of a transmission from NASA. Obviously, I think Blaha would have probably said what he did as a mistake, because he was meant to say that on the encrypted channel, because they do, sometimes they go quiet on the shuttle and on the ISS because they're speaking on a private line. He probably said that on the open channel by mistake. It was picked up by the ham. Obviously, NASA did. As soon as they realised what he'd done, they never published it. But you're not trying to claim it was faked. And that's impressive, Steve, because some skeptics will claim that was just faked. I mean, the voice sounds like Blaha, but some skeptics still say it wasn't real, it was just faked.
Okay, now let's just move on to the next clip. Right, let's see what more pearls of wisdom we have here from Mr. Jones.
The skeptics, as I said, most of them are doubling down, as you saw from that CSI article, and most of them will double down for as long as they possibly can.
Why exactly? Because the American government have said there's no evidence that the UFOs are extraterrestrial. Why would the skeptics be doubling down?
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Because the skeptic movement is a cult, Steve. It's not like, well, this thing, we don't have a belief system any more than the TV off switch is a channel or something like that. All this kind of flannel that skeptics give you is wrong. I've studied this to watch my skeptic talk. I'll put a link in the show notes towards it. They're going to double down because they want to live in a world where some things like this don't happen. They want to live in that kind of world, and they get angry when they realise they don't live in that kind of world. And so they go into denial. They go into a pretense. They retreat into an imaginary world where there's no such thing as aliens. And that's it. That's basic. I know those are harsh words, but I think it's true. And I explain in more detail in my skeptic talk.
They will. I think there's some that might be in such denial that even if the White House lawn landing happens, they'll say it's a bouncy castle.
No, well, if the White House lawn landing happens, I'd say, good heavens, look, they've finally done it. They've landed on the White House lawn. Now,
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, Steve, actually, I think you might not be, having interacted with you, I think you might not actually be one of these cultists. I think you might be different. I think you're not as diehard as some of them. I really think you're not. I think you are possibly... I think you would actually, what does it say, eat humble pie at that point. I think you probably would. I don't know specifically. I mean, you went to Warminster and you said it's all nonsense. I mean, I don't know. I am not 100% certain, but that's what I suspect.
Now, this is not going to make me immediately think that 9/11, the 9/11 was a conspiracy. It really was a directed energy weapon, powered by free energy. Now, in Ben's head, all this stuff is lumped together. If someone showed me some evidence, I'll say, OK, that's evidence of ET visiting the planet. That's not going to change my opinion on 9/11, being exactly as the history books tell us it was. Or the moon landing. I'm not going to think, blimey, NASA couldn't have gone to the moon. It's ludicrous. But in Ben's head, all this stuff is lumped together. Roswell, free energy, the NASA faking the moon landing, 9/11.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, you see, the point is, right, I do actually explain this, Steve. All right, I do actually explain why I lump. You say lumping things together. What I mean is that these things are psychologically and culturally connected. There's very, very deep sociological reasons why, if one of these things is proven true, the others will also follow. It is a domino effect, basically. In fact, I kind of answer this. I mean, in a minute, you're going to play a clip in a minute where I actually answer that point. Technically, these things are separate. Okay, it's possible for, it could be that we find out that 9/11 was an inside job, but we never find out the truth about UFOs. That is technically possible, but I think it's very unlikely. I've covered the 9/11 issue before. You bring these things up before. You bring these things up in this particular video. I've given detailed replies to you on all these issues you bring up about me. I'm not going to repeat any of the points I've made in other videos. Listeners or viewers rather can go and check it out for themselves. I watched 9/11 too. I watched that 9/11 live on TV. I didn't watch that thinking, oh, that's an inside job. Even though I was kind of woo-woo in those days. By 2001, I was well on my way to full woodom. I'd been reading David Icke for a couple of years, and I've been woo-woo since probably the mid-90s. But I didn't watch that thinking, oh, blimey, that's an inside job. I was just shocked and horrified like everybody was. I really, really was. So you carry on, Steve.
You see, the thing is, if Roswell was a balloon, then there's no such thing as free energy. Then his 9/11 conspiracy goes out of the window. All this, in his mind, is lumped together.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
No, absolutely not. I've just explained, Steve. I've just explained how that's not the case. But you see, because I've come to the conclusions that these things by studying these things independently, that they are actually correct. These things are actually true. I happen to notice that the reasons that they're true, but most people don't believe that they're true, and most people reject them, is actually very similar for all these separate phenomena. Which means if you remove the psychological and cultural shackles from people's mind regarding Roswell, you also remove it from things regarding other phenomena, such as you also remove it from their perception of Bigfoot, 9/11, the moon landings, etc. That's the point I'm making. So this is what I mean by lumping things together. You misunderstand my position here.
But most people don't lump all that stuff together in their heads. I don't look at all that stuff together. I know, I'm firmly convinced, I watched it, that 9/11 happened exactly as the history books tell us.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, Steve, I refer you to the answer I just gave.
And that's why I've actually asked him this question. If Donald Trump said to you, Roswell was the crash of a mogul balloon, would you believe it? And he said no. So Ben Emlyn-Jones is the one here that's in serious denial.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Why is that? I mean, I've already been through this with you, Steve, but I mean, why is that unreasonable? I would say no, because I know that the Roswell crash was not a mogul balloon. I've explained why. If Donald Trump says otherwise, why should I change my mind? President Trump happens to be a great statesman. He's somebody I admire an awful lot. This doesn't make him the fount of all knowledge. This doesn't mean he's completely incorruptible. This doesn't mean he is infallible. This doesn't mean he doesn't suffer from failures of nerve. He doesn't suffer from failures of the imagination. He doesn't have other pressures put on him apart from his mission, which is a noble one. So I don't understand. I don't really see why that is unreasonable.
Really, to the extent that I think he could be delusional. That there could be some sort of mental health issue going on here.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
What? Mental health issue. Shut up, Steve. Honestly, fuck you. There's nothing wrong with me. That is the ultimate slur. That is the ultimate easy dismissal, which you skeppers do. You go, oh, he must be mad. He must be nuts. Oh, you do this again later on. I'll tackle you with it again later on, because really, this is beneath you, Steve. You could do better than this. That is a cheap shot. It really is.
All of the skeptics, as far as I know, have only ever said the same thing that I'm saying, and that's, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
What did he just say? Let me just listen to that again.
Saying, and that's, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
What?
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
We've got a helicopter about things like that.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. That's real. Blimey, that is so witty. That is so witty. I'll tell you what, Steve. Next time at a dinner party, I know what to do. I'll make a note of that. Hang on. Let's have a look. Pen and paper, everyone. Look. Right. List of interesting things to say when in a social situation. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Steve, I know you're so original to have invented that phrase, but you don't mind if I borrow it, do you? Oh, I've just thought of another one. All right, look, I'll do a deal with you. I could use your original witticism, you could use mine. Okay, here it goes. Right. It's good to be open-minded, but not so open-minded that your brain falls out. I've got another one. The plural of anecdote is not data. Yay! We're on a roll here. I'll tell you what, we are going to wow everyone the next time we're sitting over our starters with a tablecloth, aren't we? Really, Steve, man, you're overdoing it with the old witticisms and originality here, mate.
Ben Emlyn-Jones desperately wants all this conspiracy claptrap to be true.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Look, there's nothing I'd like better, Steve, than to live in a world where this job is done, where there is no UFO secrecy, where we know humans are aware of our true nature, where some of the more horrible things that are going on are not happening. Because, a lot of the things I talk about here are funny and quirky. It's kind of like a curiosity. Some of them are like exciting even. Some of the things I talk about are exciting, but some of them are truly horrible. Some of the things I have to deal with in the conspiracy sphere are truly, utterly traumatizing. I mean, I've had people commit suicide within this community because of the reality of what we're facing here, especially the things to do with children. No, I'd love to live in a world where this sort of thing didn't happen. I really would. I'm hoping one day we will.
I don't desperately want it to be untrue. I'm just saying, show me the evidence. I'm not seeing any evidence, so I don't think it's true. But it's not going to have some sort of a crushing effect on my life if I find out that there is evidence of extraterrestrials visiting the planet.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, maybe, you can only speak for yourself, obviously, but I think you consciously at least you're on the level here. Subconsciously, maybe not. I don't know. Based on what you said about Warminster, I'm not sure. But some skeppers really do, Steve. Really do. A.V. Loeb. Now, I do recommend his book Extraterrestrial, where he talks about Oumuamua and things like that. I reviewed it for UFO Truth magazine, the last issue, and he describes his interactions with other scientists, and I've seen how horrible some of them have been. They've treated him like he's a criminal. They did the same thing to John Mack. I'm really surprised. I mean, one of them actually said to him, who grasped the reality of what a Muamua might be, said, I wish this thing hadn't been so weird. Why can't it just be normal like other objects in space? That is somebody who really doesn't want... They don't want these anomalous things to come into their world. They don't want science to be about exploring very, very strange things. They want science to be about understanding a world in which there are no strange things. So you can speak for yourself, Steve, but I don't think you are representative of the entire skeptic milieu.
The American government have said they don't have any evidence of ET visitation. That tells us they don't have any material from Roswell. An ET craft has never crashed anywhere on Earth.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Steve, that's not true, right? They actually... What they've said is that they've released several confusing statements here. They've said there's no specific evidence that we are being visited, but they can't rule it out. Now, Senator Martin Heinrich, if you remember what I said about him in my last UFO disclosure video, UFO Jesus covered this as well. You could see by the way he was talking that what he was hinting at is basically what I've seen from several officials within the US. They can't rule out that there are extraterrestrials, but what they don't want to... They've said that, but they've hinted more. They've hinted that it's quite likely these things are extraterrestrial artifacts, but no one wants to be the first one to say it. They're all sort of shrinking back, saying, I don't want to be the person who goes down in history to be the first one ever to utter the A word, aliens. At some point someone will, but honestly, this is very interesting about human psychology here and about our culture. To examine the way the media and the officials are dealing with this. It really is very, very revealing indeed.
Others, though, I think will come over. Sam Harris is not going to be the only one. The problem is, I think...
I've no idea who Sam Harris is, but I'm guessing he's a skeptic, but so what, I mean, people have different opinions. That's meaningless.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, Steve, you're obviously a skeptic, but you're not in with the skeptic milieu, are you? You're not part of the skeptic community, because Sam Harris is one of the four horsemen. He's up there with Dawkins and Hitchens and Dennett. He's a controversial character as well within the skeptic movement, because he's very much a libertarian, and this has put him into conflict with a kind of wokist element of the skeptic movement. There is an internal skeptic civil war going on right now between there's the atheism plus people on the sort of wokist side, and there's the sort of more conservative libertarians that are hanging around, Peter Boghossian and Micromedia and people like that. So Sam Harris has definitely planted his flag with the latter side, which has made him a lot of enemies within the atheo-skeptic world. But I'm very surprised you haven't heard of him. I really am, because he is one of the most famous skeptics of all. You've heard of Randy. You refer to Randy in a minute, but you've not heard of Sam Harris. I'm honestly surprised.
This is something completely new. This new ufology. It's something humanity's never had to deal with before. It's something no one's ever had to deal with, except like a minority of people who are what they call, what was the word they used? Enthusiasts.
Yeah, well, that's what you are, Ben. You're not researchers, you are enthusiasts.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
No, Steve, I am a researcher. The term enthusiast, I think, is derogatory, and that's why I object to it.
The general population is now going to have to come to terms with all this.
The general population couldn't care less, man. They really couldn't.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Seriously, Steve? They couldn't care less? I know a lot of them believe in it anyway, but to have it confirmed by that big Freudian father figure in Westminster or the White House, for them to come out and say, yes, we're not alone in this universe, we are being interacted with by a non-human intelligence, we don't know what that intelligence wants. Sometimes it is hostile, sometimes it's not. Most of the time it's not, luckily. But they can abduct you, they can take you away and subject you to non-consensual medical operations, sexual abuse and indoctrination, and there's absolutely nothing we can do to stop them. You know, this idea there's some kind of treaty going on. Oh, yes, you let us abduct people and we'll give you this technology. Absolute rubbish. If there was ever some kind of treaty with the aliens, humans wouldn't have much to bring to the bargaining table, would they? They don't. The aliens don't need our permission to abduct us. Now, do you honestly think that wouldn't affect people? Now, to have someone like me say it is one thing. To have someone like Sleepy Joe say it is something entirely different. This would be an absolute upheaval. It would be momentous. Now, honestly, Steve, I know you probably wouldn't want to do this, but I do recommend anyone watching this read my book, Roswell Rising: A Novel of Disclosure. And it's the 2 sequels where I go into this in more detail. I really do recommend that. So, let's Steve carry on.
People like you and me, I assume most of you watching this are kind of loonies or tinfoil hatters like me, we are going to have to play a leadership role.
Yes, I'm afraid Ben's either changed his prescription or he's forgotten to take his Thorazine. He really sees himself as some sort of prophet here. He really thinks he's going to have to take some sort of leadership role.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Firstly, cut out the stupid comments about medication. All right, Steve, I am not mentally ill. That's just pathetic. That's really pathetic. And when I say leadership, I don't mean... I'm actually correct, okay? I'll have to just say it's... Yes, basically. When I say people like us are going to have to play a leadership role, yes, we are. I think we are. People are going to look for information. The information they're going to need is all there in front of them. They've been ignoring it and poking fun at it for their whole lives. It's now there for them. The books by Timothy Good, my books, my own publications online, things like that. They are going to look at these. They're going to read them. They're going to want our advice. They're going to want our advice, and they're going to want, yes, us to lead them and to provide comfort for them. Not necessarily me personally. I'm not saying it's definitely me as an individual. I'm not saying I'm going to be the saviour or anything narcissistic like that. I'll leave that sort of thing to Stephen Greer. I'm just saying that people like us are going to be in that position, whether you like it or not.
Because people are going to look to us to guide them.
Can you imagine being guided by Benjamin Jones? Really?
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
As I said, not me personally, but I'm already in touch with people who are completely new to this subject, and they've discovered my material, and they're reading it. They're looking for all the back catalogues of everything I've written, everything I've published in terms of my videos and my radio shows, and they tell me that they're going for all of it. And there's a lot there, and they're interested in all of it. So yeah. That's true, Steve.
I mean, the Queen of England is a shape-shifting lizard. Take my word for it. Roswell was the crash of an alien spacecraft. 9/11, that was a directed energy weapon powered by free energy, and that was as a result of the Roswell crash. They found the way of generating free energy from the power system on the Roswell craft. Armstrong, none of the Apollo guys ever walked on the moon. Ghosts are real. And Bigfoot is not some clown in a gorilla suit. It's real.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, Steve, I'm not sure. How do I reply to that? Yes, 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 and yes. What you just said merely indicates that you have listened very carefully and paid much attention to my videos, and I'm very pleased that you've done so.
Because of our experience and because of the fact we've already come to grips with this, and we're going to have to, that's something we're going to have to deal with as well. The skeptics are going to go through, I think, the biggest upheaval of their entire...
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
All right, Steve just had a laughing fit there. He was just laughing non-stop there for about 20 minutes, and I've just edited that bit out.
Their entire movement. It's basically going to be the end of their movement, because their entire raison d'etre is to disprove these things.
No.
Yes.
I think I'm not a member of any skeptic movement. But
Well, Steve, the fact that you don't know who Sam Harris is, I think means I believe you.
I think skeptics generally just say, "Show me the evidence." James Randi, that's all he ever said. Show me the evidence. If you can show me the evidence that ghosts are real, I'll give you $1 million. It's a pretty good incentive, isn't it, for someone producing a ghost? Never happened.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
No, I suggest you look at the George Simpson lawsuit, Steve. I'm not going to repeat points I've made before. It's all in my skeptic talk. But James Randi was a shady character. I don't think he was honest. I don't think he was honest in his motives, let alone the way he treated people. I know you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but what the hell? I mean, I'm not going to lie about what he was doing. And I think he had some kind of secret mission, a bit like that space shuttle. He was doing work, not for the NSA, but maybe for something similar. Anyway, I'll let you carry on.
People like Mick West and Thunderfoot are smart guys, and they look at it and they'll give an opinion on it. And Mick West recently backed up his opinion with a very simple bit of trigonometry, simple calculation. Now, the numbers don't lie.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, numbers don't lie, Steve. No, but people who interpret numbers can lie and they can be mistaken. I think actually Thunderfoot is more sensible than Mick West. I mean, Thunderfoot is another skeptic who's taken the Sam Harris side in the whole internal skeptic civil war. But when you refer to numbers don't lying, I mean, one thing you should do if you get the chance is just read UFO Truth magazine, where I've talked about this. But see, Mick West and Thunderfoot, the data are different according to them. They're using a similar set of equations. For example, Phil Mason, that is Thunderfoot, uses the same methodology that West does. And he uses similar equations. And he puts the height of this object at 8,000 feet, whereas Mick places it at 13,000 feet. That indicates that there is imprecision within this methodology. And that's something that Charles Scott actually noticed himself. And he tried to explain it to you too.
When you look at the conspiracy, the woo-woos, the conspiracy guys, the woo-woos, they're really not very smart guys. They're people like Ben Emlyn-Jones, Colin Wolford.
You leave Colin Wolford alone.
They're Tony Topping. They're really not very smart guys. And I think that in itself speaks volumes.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Look in the mirror, Steve. How smart do you have to be to understand the ad hominem fallacy? Look at the videos I've made as replies to you. I know you've been watching them because you just said you actually do represent my opinions at a basic level very accurately. So you've been watching my videos, saying, "Oh, it's not a very smart guy." Well, firstly, that is insulting, but it's offensive. But really, it's not that bothers me. I mean, I'm an ex-hospital porter; I can take it. What bothers me is you lay these things out. Oh, there's these woo-woos, not very smart guys, and you think that's some kind of point. You think you're making some kind of axiom by saying that, and you're not. But you don't realise it.
But certainly I can't imagine any skeptics getting upset over what the Pentagon, what they've said. They said there's no evidence any of this stuff is extraterrestrial. So
we've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, it looks like the A.V. Loeb's colleagues are very, very are very upset about it. I mean, it's again, they're trying to avoid it. See, this is why I think there's some kind of real limiter. There's an elephant in the room situation here. They've got some real set of blinkers on right now. It's not that they deny these things exist now. It's like they know that these things are real, and they just don't want to say it. They just don't want to utter the A word, like I said. So yeah, I mean, I look at A.V. Loeb's colleagues. A.V. Loeb doesn't believe in UFOs. I mean, he didn't comment. He didn't mention UFOs once in his entire book, which I thought was very strange. But when he was in an interview, someone actually asked him about it, and he just said, "Oh, I don't think there's anything to see here," which is odd, really, because he believes that an interstellar artificial spacecraft or light sail has gone through the solar system. Yeah, he doesn't believe in UFOs, which I think is odd. And you think one would be a natural development from the other. But even though he doesn't believe in UFOs, he doesn't take the ATIP stuff seriously, he's been on live streams with people who really attack him and get nasty with him. He's a very brave man, A.V. Loeb. I respect him enormously.
And this is good. This is going to be, excuse me. There's other things apart from UFOs, of course. I mean,
Steve, what's funny about me yawning? Why does that amuse you?
There's ghosts and there's other things, but it's a domino. It's going to domino. It's going to domino out into other areas, because once the cultural taboo is evaporated.
Yeah, and he's going to go on to mention Bigfoot. Well, he's mentioned ghosts already, but see, he's lumping all this together. He's saying, okay, if people are going to take UFOs seriously, then they're going to have to take ghosts seriously and Bigfoot seriously. That makes no sense whatsoever. Why would you?
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Look, you ask me why. You say, why? Why is it this? Well, Steve, I'm explaining to you why. I've just explained to you why I think that's the case. In a clip you've just played. Why don't you address my points?
Once the idea that's just...
I'm explaining to you again now.
The idea that it's just wrong psychologically and socially to deal with these things is no longer the case.
Steve, I'm setting a what I'm saying basically is there is a precedent for government lives involving these phenomena, which moves them from the crazy folder to the serious folder, basically. I'm explaining the very thing you're asking me, well, why do you think that? Why do you think that, Ben? And I'm explaining why. If if I'm going to explain why and you say, why do you think that, Ben, we're going to be stuck in an impasse here, down a blind alley. In order to move our conversation forward, you need to address the points I'm making in the clip that you are playing in your video.
And it becomes acceptable culturally and psychologically. At that moment, there's going to be similar revelations in other areas. Bigfoot, for example. There's going to be a lot more interest in Bigfoot. And a lot of the evidence that's been rejected will be taken seriously.
No, I don't think so. I think most people are a little bit smarter than that, to be honest.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
That's not an argument, Steve. It is simply not an argument, to quote Stephen Molyneux. You've not said anything that really addresses a single point I've made in this segment of your video. I'd love you to do so. I really would. I'd love to get into the dialogue with you. Hopefully, when we're speaking live, we may find it a little bit easier. I really would like to.
The same with ghosts and things like that. So this is, to quote Chris Carter, the author, not the creator of X-Files, a book author. This is the fall of the House of Skeptic. It's going to be difficult for these people.
The fall of the House of Skeptic.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Okay, that quote by Chris Carter was actually the title of his book. I dare you to read it, Steve. I dare you to read The Fall of the House of Skeptic. Because I've read skeptic books. I've read loads of them. I've reviewed them. Come on, Steve, read it. You may learn something.
Yeah. Well, because the leak from what's going to be released by the Pentagon next week, or is it next week or the week after, says there is no evidence that UFOs are extraterrestrial. He's talking as though they've said the opposite, that they are extraterrestrial, isn't he? I think in his head that's what they've said.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, actually, you see, it's not in my head. In a way, they have said that. They've said that through omission. If you read the actual quotes, they say things like, "Well, these don't represent." They'll be very, very cautious. I mean, look at Jen Psaki, what she said. We regard these things as unlikely to be any kind of artifacts. It's certainly not anything that belongs to the United States. We don't They don't resemble anything we know about foreign technology from Russia or China or any other nation or any non-state actor. And they go through the whole list of things they're not. And then they just stop. And some of them sort of smile and they almost wink. It's like, and then they actually said that we can't rule out that these are ET. Saying I can't rule it out. And I'd love them just to say, look, we think this is the most likely, we don't know for certain, okay, but we think the most likely things is these are aliens. I'd love them to say that, but they don't want to say it. And there are profound cultural and psychological and sociological reasons for that, and political reasons as well. And that's what that's the point I've been trying to make to you, and you seem to have failed to understand it. Now, as you know, the UAPT report was supposedly leaked because one of the congressmen told the New York Times what was in it when they'd been briefed in. Now, the fact of the matter is, though, we don't actually know what the content is, and we won't know till next Friday. Be sure you'll hear all about it from me when that report is actually released formally. But we don't know yet, Steve, and as I said in my video on the subject, we have to be patient.
And they are going to go. It's going to be traumatic. I don't bear them any ill will. I have friends who are skeptics. And
See, he's got very much an us and them mentality, hasn't he?
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Well, Steve, what do you expect? Of course, this is an us and them situation. When you say the things you say, oh, have you taken your medication, Ben? Or I get this sort of thing all the time. I get the rudeness I get from skeptics is unbelievable. I mean, you're one of the nicer ones, actually, Steve. I must say. I mean, this is why other people can't stand you. I mean, I've had people. You're writing to me saying, block Steve Mumbling. Why did you block Steve Mumbling? Why did you engage with him? And the reason is because basically I've got a pretty thick skin. I've had to deal with Team Droik, and you've seen the video I make about them. I mean, I'm not bothered by it. I could deal with people like you, Steve. But there is an us and them situation here. We are on opposite sides of an epistemological, maybe not epistemological, but it is of an ideological spectrum. Because we both have, as I said earlier, skeptics and woo-woos are both interested in the very same subjects, but we just have a completely different opinion about what these phenomena are and what causes them.
Wish them all the best, and just to let you know, guys, I at least am here if you need me.
Well, I'm sure you'll understand if I don't find that terribly comforting, Ben.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Oh, poor old Steve. Don't you want a hug, Steve? Oh, dear. I had to edit out another laughing fit there, actually. I actually edited out about 5 minutes there because Steve simply repeats a point he made earlier, and I'm not going to address that again. But anyway, let him carry on.
But he really does see himself as some sort of prophet, doesn't he? He really does. And to clump all that...
Behold the great prophet Ben! No, Steve, honestly, I'm not a prophet. I'm just a guy who's gathering information, giving it out to people, and if people can take it or leave it. In the past, most people left it. Now more and more people are taking it. That's all it is.
Together in his head, and to actually seriously believe all that bloody nonsense, and believe that the skeptics are all going to be upset and they're going to turn to people like him for guidance. Honestly, I think that's seriously delusional. Seriously delusional, to the point that if you're not taking any medication, Ben, I think you should probably get yourself checked out, mate.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
That's the third time you've laid that bullshit on me, Steve. Come on, this is just a slur. It's below the belt. It's childish and it's stupid, and you can do better than that. As for what the rest of what you said, I have been studying the skeptic movement in great detail. I've done several videos on this subject. You feel free to comment on them if you wish, and I disagree. I disagree completely. I think the skeptic movement is in big trouble. It is facing a factual tidal wave which is going to break down the seawall of their worldview, and that's not pleasant. It's not pleasant for anyone to be in that situation. We are not completely rational creatures. We are emotional creatures. We develop emotional bonds with our own notions and our own view of the world and the way we see life and the way we interact with reality. We develop emotional bonds with those things. I do too. I'm not an exception here. the purpose of science is to one of the purposes of science, I think, is to overcome those emotional bonds. You can never get rid of them, but you can try and work around them, and I am trying to do that. If I didn't want to do, I would not even look at the skeptic movement. I would have to take. I want to hear both sides of the story for that very reason, because I'm aware I'm integrating this element to my personality. I think I'm better at doing that than most skeptics are.
What a world we're going through, eh? What a strange turn of events that is happening right now.
Well, I don't know what world you live in, Ben, but I can't. Business as usual where I am. I can't say I've noticed very much at all. All I've noticed is a couple of people commenting on the videos that were released 3 or 4 years ago, and a new one, or a new video of the sun setting in infrared. Got no idea what you're talking about.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Are you serious, Steve? Are you seriously saying that what's happening in the world right now, especially in all kinds of areas, but I mean, I know you're referring specifically to the UFO field. Are you really saying that 10 years ago that could have happened? And you would say, oh no, it's exactly the same. What's the whole thing 10 years ago when, say, Zabel and Dolan published their book, it's exactly the same as now. Watch Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan and Bryce Zabel did a special 10-year anniversary edition, and they did it this year because it is the 10th anniversary of AD After Disclosure. And they completely take apart what you've just said. I mean, it's bad enough you believe Mick West. I mean, Mick West has been comprehensively discredited numerous times, and he won't go away. He keeps coming back and saying, no, that's not the case. But he's as tenacious as you, actually, Steve. He really is. Carry on.
I do wonder, actually, what's going to happen with...
Perhaps you could leave a comment below if you know what revelations he's talking about.
The G7. I mean, is there going to be...
Oh, God, can you imagine the G7? They're not going to be remotely interested in UFOs.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Oh, Steve, they are. They really, really are. I mean, a lot of the in-camera discussions they've had will have been about this subject. I absolutely assure you, and I think we're going to find out a lot more about that coming up.
Is something going to be said about this at the G7? I don't know. Because Boris, I don't know yet. As I said in the last video, I don't know yet whether Boris has broken out of his chain.
And just to give you another example of how how remote from reality Benjamin Jones is, he actually thought that Boris Johnson's family had been kidnapped and Boris was being coerced into doing whatever he was doing or not doing whatever he was doing in the UK, and he actually sent him a copy of the SAS rescuing the hostages from the Iranian embassy, wasn't it? Who Dares Wins or something like that.
It was a film, Steve. It was a movie based on that particular operation. It was a different scenario.
He said to give him a clue about getting his family rescued. Yeah. I mean, this is seriously delusional stuff.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Okay, well, Steve, I don't think it is delusional at all. I've made two videos recently about that. One was banned. One was called Why I Still Support Boris, and the other was called Trump and Boris Returned. The second one was banned. I don't think I'm delusional at all. Apart from that, it's really weird, actually, because what you just said indicates that you do actually pay attention to what I'm saying. Which is really weird, because there's other times earlier on in this video where I felt you weren't listening to me, you weren't paying attention to what I'm saying. But it's clear you are taking in on board what I'm saying, because you actually represented my position very accurately.
So I'll be back in front of the camera.
Yeah, okay. He can't keep away from the camera, can he? Have you noticed that whenever he does videos and he comments on my stuff, we see him and he reads it, and yet when I do comments about his stuff, you see him making the comments. He just cannot keep away from that camera.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
What's that got to do with anything, Steve? What does... I don't know what point you're making, because you're now criticising me because we use different camera angles. We have a different technical style in our videos. Is that your point? Why? Well, why is that an issue?
Now, there is one other thing I wanted to point out here, and that's these things here, these T-shirts here. And he's saying that the woos should all be wearing these tall "Told you so" T-shirts. Now, I can understand them wearing them if the American government had said, "Yeah, okay, there is evidence that these UFOs are extraterrestrial," but that's not what they're saying. I'm sure he's got it wrong, the wrong way round in his head. You know, they've said there's no evidence, and he's going, "Well, I told you there is evidence. See." Because really, it's the skeptics that should be wearing these. You know, there is no evidence of UFOs being extraterrestrial. Told you so. There you go.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Do you want to see what I'm wearing right now, Steve? Look what I'm wearing. Can you see that? I'm wearing one of them right now. And as everything you just said, I've explained why I think you're wrong.
Even this guy here, I mean...
Okay, he's just showing the Bob Lazar "I Told You So" T-shirt.
Really? Bob Lazar? Does anyone with an IQ bigger than their shoe size take this guy seriously? So, yeah, I'm really not sure what that's all about. But take my word for it, Ben, the world of skeptics is not going to be inconsolable because the Pentagon has said there's no evidence that the UFOs are extraterrestrial. This whole video makes no sense whatsoever.
We've got a helicopter going over somewhere. I'm not paranoid about things like that.
Okay, well, the last bit is kind of that's the end of it now. Well, that's all I'm going to address. Steve goes on to claim that everything that to do with the ATIP stuff's going to fizzle out. It's going to come to nothing. It's a nothing burger. I disagree. That's all I can say, and I've explained why I disagree with you. But there you are. That's all you can do. And no doubt Steve will make his own reply video to this, and maybe I'll make a reply video to him. I don't know. But I'm very excited about what's coming up. I think it's not going to fizzle out. There's no sign that it's going to fizzle out. Skeptics like you were predicting it would fizzle out from December 2017. And to be honest, 2018 it did look a bit that way actually. So 2018 it sort of went away for a bit, but then it came back with a vengeance, and now it's coming back even more. So no way is it going to fizzle out. Absolutely not. And there's no reason to think it's going to be honest. And I explained exactly why I think you're wrong and why you were delusional in this case. But anyway, I'll be making another reply video to Steve soon. And don't forget, I haven't made arrangements with him, but Steve and I are in touch, and we are going to negotiate a time and a place for the Clash of the Titans. And that's going to be quite something, I'll tell you. I don't know if it'll be a live stream or whether we'll record it. That's one of the things we're going to have to discuss. But I'm very much looking forward to debating the fake alien invasion and many, many other things that have come. I really, really am. As always, it's quite... I've got no resentment to Steve. Steve... What I've done this evening in addressing Steve is given me the chance to give you information. Steve, essentially, is like they say about debates. If you're in a debate with someone, it's not about proving your opponent wrong. You are performing for a third party. It's about convincing the people watching, the viewers, the audience. You see, and Steve has essentially given me a chance. He's opened the door. He's lowered that part of his armour and the armour of the skeptic worldview to allow me to do that. See. So I hope you enjoy that. There's going to be another video soon. I'm going to do a live stream, hopefully on Referendum Day, which is next Wednesday, and I'm going to try and do a live stream on Odyssey at some point as well, which would be fun. I'll let you know about that. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Steve Mumbling, for all this. Let's just see if Peter Paget has replied to me. Not yet, but I won't read out his email anyway. I don't read out private correspondence, but rest assured that I'll inform you as best I can without breaching his privacy exactly what this situation between Steve Mumbling and Peter Paget is, because I'm curious, I really am. But anyway, keep watching the channel. There'll be more coming very soon from me. Have a good weekend. Thank you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.